Due to popular demand and some significant changes on the market, I would like to make a short extension video for our applications chapter. So let's first revise a little bit. So what are the incentives to actually use fuel cells in applications? Well, first of all, one of the main points which is often made by developers is it is efficient. Well, we've already seen before that efficiency is somewhat difficult to say. However, what is safe to say, if we look at the well-to-wheel efficiency of the hydrogen-fueled car with a fuel cell compared to a gasoline-powered car, we actually have a little bit of a higher efficiency. However, remember that actually the BEV, the battery-powered vehicle, actually has a significantly higher well-to-wheel efficiency. Another point which is often brought forward is that there are various fuel production methods. So hydrogen can, for example, be produced by natural gas, by nuclear power, by coal, or most notably by renewable sources, so wind, solar, biomass, etc. To really have this fully green way of moving cars, where we really have zero emissions, however, only the last point with the renewable sources qualifies for this incentive. Using natural gas to produce hydrogen is not really fulfilling our goals of obtaining truly green hydrogen. The next point about fuel cells is basically the technology is convenient. If we think about a car, we can basically refuel it within minutes. We will look about that in a second. Then also we have a kind of quiet technology, so fuel cells usually don't make any extra noise like a combustion engine does, for example. And also they are ideally clean, so we do not have any tailpipe emissions for cars, for example. This is of course true for all kinds. Even if we produce our hydrogen with coal, we still have zero tailpipe emissions. But of course, for the overall value chain, we're always looking at which step in the production any emission is produced as well. And of course, what we already discussed briefly in the previous part here is that we basically have a kind of versatile and scalable technology which can be used for portable applications, for transportations, and also for stationary applications. Why is this interesting? Well, here again you see the representation of these three markets. We have the transportation, stationary, and portable market, and on the right you see the prediction of the US fuel cell market by the application from 2018 up to a prediction of 2028. We see that we have a 23.2% year-over-year growth here, but if you look very closely here, you see that the majority of this market share here is actually made up by stationary applications. So although I gave a little bit of the incentive in the direction of using fuel cells for transportation, keep in mind that there is competition on the market, notably from battery-powered vehicles, and that maybe hydrogen fuel cell technology will, after all, be mostly interesting for stationary applications. I want to nevertheless go through these applications now. So first of all, portable fuel cell applications. Here we're talking about kind of a small power range, so mostly below 100 watts. So what kind of devices this could be? This could be something for the camping sector or some small emergency power generator, for example, from the company SFC Energy. Or we have kind of mobile power and heat supplies for single family households from Sunfire fuel cells, or the application in unmanned aerial vehicles, so-called UAVs. Keep in mind, however, that the fuel cell itself is basically just, you might say, the motor. You still have to store your fuel in kind of a tank. So this is extra infrastructure which comes with your fuel cell. So we are always facing a trade-off between also the fuel cell weight and size, and of course the power which it can provide. So we want to ideally have an ideal stored energy per mass or stored energy per volume. However, again, this stored energy, however, to really convert it, that requires your fuel cell and a storage tank. For these portable applications, usually DMFCs and SOFC type fuel cells are preferred simply because the fuel handling is easier. You can use liquefied gas or methanol. One of such examples here is this fuel cell from EFOY Comfort 80 here. So this is, for example, portable DMFC emergency power generator, which can provide up to 80 ampere hours per day. So this would roughly be around 20 smartphone battery charges. However, of course, for this, you have to refuel this cell. The next kind of application would be this mobile fuel cell application, so mostly for transportation. So this is particularly interesting for and in the public focus due to climate change and due to automotive applications or running trains, for example, on non-electrified lines. The fuel cell here serves basically as an energy converter to convert your green hydrogen to electricity and therefore provide movement by in this kind of application. For these applications, we mostly use the PEMFC because we can here provide hydrogen in a more or less centralized infrastructure, for example. And the PEMFC is usually used with the lightweight metallic bipolar plates. So this is a clear difference here. Before, in the portable applications, we mostly talked about kind of really in contact customer applications where the customer might also have to refuel the device themselves. However, here we are talking about larger applications where the fuel handling is easier for public transport, for example, because we can have centralized refueling stations. And it's not so much straightforward for personal transport because here again, the customer has to do the refilling themselves. And examples for this kind of mobile fuel cell applications would be passenger vehicles, of course, trucks, forklifts, buses, also logistic vehicles and applications in aviation and marine. And something which is also growing in importance would be e-bikes. However, keep in mind that for all of these applications, particularly e-bikes, again, we are having this clear competition with solely battery-powered vehicles. On the right here, you, for example, see one of the first hydrogen-powered trains. Trains, I would say, actually are one of the main means to use hydrogen fuel cells. Simply because due to their large mass and their volume, you can, for example, establish hydrogen tanks underneath the cards or on top of the cards. Now, the biggest application, as we've seen in this graph, which is predicted to not only grow the most, but effectively take over the most market share, are these stationary fuel cell applications. So here the electrical power range is not as in the portable around 100 watts, but here we are in the range of 0.75 kilowatts up to 5 kilowatts, so 5,000 watts. These kind of systems are often standalone and combined systems, so they are often heat and power plant combined. And they are especially widespread in Japan actually, and also there's heavily subsidized research going on, for example, in Europe. These devices are available commercially already and they can come in different sizes. So either to, for example, power a single family home, but also small businesses and multi-family homes. For these kind of applications, typically the PEMFC or the SOFC systems are most widely used. And examples here, for example, include this combined heat and power, the CHP systems, what I already talked about. It also includes uninterrupted power systems, so-called UPS, and also distributed power generation. Distributed power generation meaning that you basically have a decentralized storage of energy within your grid, and if energy is required, these fuel cells can be booted up to provide power to the grid. One of such examples would be the CHP in-house 5000 Plus. So this is, for example, a combined heat and power plant design with an electrical output of 4.2 kilowatts and a thermal output of 7.5 kilowatts. To show you that this is not just kind of model thinking, but these fuel cells are actually in practice already, I want to give you a short insight into a few real-life applications where it's actually used. So for example, fuel cell delivery and parcel trucks are starting deliveries in California and New York, most notably here from UPS and FedEx, for example. At Memphis Airport, we start to see so-called fuel cell tow trucks as part of the airport vehicle fleet. And the port in Hawaii, for example, uses fuel cells for maritime power production. Then we have at the Super Bowl 50, for example, the lights were actually powered partially by fuel cells. We're starting to see more and more fuel cell buses, as particularly here, buses which are on the road in California. Also, we're seeing heavy-duty fuel cell trucks, as you see on the bottom left here, but also kind of, I would say, passenger/military vehicles like the ZH2, which was a joint collaboration by the US Army and GM and resembles the first of its kind. Then if we go to a more stationary level for a second, we would talk about, for example, backup power during Hurricane Sandy, or to provide backup power or major power to the World Trade Center in New York, and also this decentralized grid storage, which can be installed for cell phone towers, railroads, or to power utilities. But to show you that it's not just limited to these big applications, there's also a growing market for these forklifts in warehouses and stores, for example. Other applications, which are admittedly partially a bit more exotic, include this 4-seater fuel cell plane here, which of course always has a trade-off between weight of the airplane and actually power and storage provided by our fuel cell. But we have more viable applications as well as fuel cell cab fleet, hydrogen fuel cell trains, and up to a scale where we can power whole cities, like this city here in Japan, which can basically run on hydrogen energy. A key difference, especially if we look at mobility, is the number of internal components and the type of internal components we need. If we look in a conventional vehicle, we basically need a fuel tank and we need an internal combustion engine, and this is basically sufficient to power your car. Now, a short insight into BEVs, so battery electric vehicles. We do have a battery which stores your energy, and it also provides this power. So basically you only need a PCU, a power control unit, and this will basically directly power the electric motor and therefore generate the movement. For FCEVs, for fuel cell electric vehicles, this is a little bit more complex. So as a central part, we do have our fuel cell, and I've already talked about this before. The standalone fuel cell should just be seen as a conversion device. So you still need some means to store the hydrogen, and for this you have to accommodate an additional hydrogen tank in your car. Oftentimes these cars would like to use recuperation systems, so for example regenerative braking. For these kind of purposes you either need additional capacitors or you need an additional battery in the car, which is of course not as big as in the battery electric vehicle, but you might have to fit an additional component in there. And of course then you also have this power control unit and your electric motor. So it becomes quite apparent that especially for this transportation sector, you have to rethink the car design. In this design, for example, what you see here is underneath the passenger cabin you have these 700 bar pressure vessels mounted, which are storing your hydrogen. then you need your fuel cell stack system, which is basically going typically in the front. Your electric motor is usually a bit smaller than a combustion engine, but instead you might have to fit in, for example, additional air compressors and humidifiers. The humidifiers, about which's purpose we talked about earlier, that oftentimes you have to humidify your gas in order to prevent a drying out membrane and notably to prevent the Nafion from drying out during operation. So if you look at this fuel cell electric vehicle parts now, you basically see that some of the parts are similar to a battery-powered vehicle and some are even similar to a combustion engine-powered vehicle. However, what gets important here is, well, you need the electric motor. Of course, this is clear because you're running on electric energy. But what's new here is that you actually need this hydrogen tanks here, which again are shown underneath the cabin. You need a specialized exhaust system, which can be used for the fuel cells. Well, ideally this would just include basically water. And you need a battery package, which is often mounted in the back here as well. And of course in the front, well, as I said, you have this electric motor. You usually have some climate control included here, and you have this advanced driving aid system and the sensors, which are especially necessary in order to control your fuel cell and the flow of hydrogen and oxygen into your fuel cell. The major point about these different types of cars, notably battery powered vehicles and fuel cell powered vehicles, is the refueling. It is often claimed as a major advantage towards battery electric vehicles, where the charging usually takes hours, that with fuel cell powered vehicles, charging only takes minutes. The dispenser can basically look similar to what can be used for gasoline, so the customer can easily use it. So it's a kind of safe and familiar process for the customer. However, it is important to notice that you cannot simply equip every dispenser at a fuel station with hydrogen. So you require additional infrastructure. And this infrastructure requires the delivery of the hydrogen to these selling points. And also you have to provide a means to have on-site storage there. So while this is admittedly a major advantage towards the battery powered vehicles, the battery recharging infrastructure is simply easier to build up than the hydrogen refueling. Just thinking about that, you can easily plug in your battery electric vehicle at home, which is not possible with hydrogen as of now. In practice, the hydrogen fuel cell refueling could look something like this, which is from a Californian company here. So these kind of dispensers, as you can see, basically look like a normal gas station refueling. With this chapter, I mostly want to show you that fuel cells are under permanent development and there's gotten a lot of movement into the market. Just recently, it was published that the world's first hydrogen train with a speed of over 160 kilometers per hour is rolled out in China. Also, Germany reports that more than 5,000 hydrogen lorries will hit the roads in 2023. And China also focuses more on public transport and also general fuel cell vehicles, for example with this sale of 500 fuel cell engines. So what I want to show you with this edition is basically we're looking at a highly active area of research and development. And we do look at an area where we have some competing technologies, notably with the battery storage. And after all, we will have to see which technology is more suitable for which application. Just remember that the type of hydrogen fuel cell might be a deterministic factor as well, for which purpose it can be very suitable and for which it would be unsuitable. However, as a bottom line, both technologies have their strengths and weaknesses, and I'm looking forward to what kind of developments we will see in the following years on this market.